Hello and welcome to the next edition of The Portal, a doorway that takes you into the latest happenings of the world of technology, leadership and business. Well, today we have with us Bhavana. Welcome Bhavana. Thank you for being part of this podcast. Looking forward to tap into your knowledge and expertise. Well, to give you a brief background about Bhavana, Bhavana is a senior technology and business leader with more than 25 plus years of extensive global experience in building, leading organizations that have successfully addressed complex business challenges and also driven a lot of innovation. Well, she brings in-depth knowledge and expertise, especially in the aviation industry. That is a dream for, I know, many of the folks who are watching this podcast. She's worked with 27 global airlines, wow, and 4 major airports. And to her credit, she's also designed and crafted digital airport blueprint. In our conversation, we'd like to really know a little bit more about that at IBM and at Microsoft. Currently, she's a partner, EY Technology Practice and Aviation Lead. Thank you, Bhavana, for coming here once again. We have a wide range of audience here, Bhavana. We have people who are just graduated or in the college, to those who have, initial levels of their career, going through that campus to corporate, to mid-level professionals, to even those who are architecting, solutions. So you've had a very rich career across, and I'm sure a lot of experiences and challenges. So what we'd like to, hear from you is across that journey. Today is a day where everybody's talking about there is no conversation which ends without AI. Do you agree?
Totally. I was just, when you were doing my introductions, is when I realized, 25 plus years is a long journey from where we started and how technology was back then versus what it is today, and the explosion and the exposure people are having is phenomenal. I think tech has gone through various evolutions, and the adoption also has been increasingly high across all industries. And I would definitely say in the recent past, at least like 4-5 years, AI became the core of everything what we do around technology, right? And I'm sure there's a long way, and we will continue to see this explosion of AI in the tech interventions, innovations, and businesses adopting to the technology. So yes, AI became part and parcel of our day-to-day lives, to make lives easier, better, and far more superior. So there's no doubt about that, Vinay.
Awesome. So, I know I straight away jumped into the question, but would be good for our audience to quickly, if you could talk about, your journey that has been
Sure.
as part of, you introducing yourself to the larger crowd so that they can gain from your
Absolutely.
expertise.
Thanks, Vinay, and it's an honor and pleasure to be here sharing this podcast with you, and and I'm extremely privileged to be here addressing your audience group, spanning across campus to the senior most people. It's truly a privilege. With, as you started 25 plus years, it's a long journey, but I also would like to emphasize that I didn't come from an engineering background. I came from a nutrition background.
Oh wow! Okay.
And the journey wasn't easy, but I strongly believe what's fun when everything is easy, right?
Yeah.
So but from nutrition to tech is an unplanned switch. But I think over the period of time, I started falling in love with, I wouldn't say a core tech part of it, but what I started enjoying is the marriage between a business problem statement and how tech is solving that, right? That's, I think, was something that excited me about my journey. Yes, started as a Siebel consultant back in early 90s when Siebel was just evolved. And then the journey was like different milestones. I've been in US for 6 years, returned back to India, been part of various organizations driving their digital competencies, from a solution architect to a business analyst to data lead to customer experience competency head, setting up a loyalty COE, and then eventually I think somewhere I've also started realizing there's a definitive importance of a domain understanding, and that's how I think it just happened to be by the virtue of working with 27 airlines in a different capacity, but then it also made me move towards leading travel and transportation industry sector in various organizations. And yeah, with ITC Infotech, with IBM, with Microsoft, and currently with EY, the journey had its own exciting and interesting milestones, and which I feel so proud of. Yes, it also had challenges. The best thing that I can tell, and addressing to the audience as well, is that one thing that I loved throughout this journey is that I've always explored what's new, either in a domain standpoint or from a tech standpoint. Otherwise, from a nutrition background to a partner at EY today wouldn't have been possible. So yeah, I always wanted to be that what's new, what's new in the technology, what's new in the industry, can I be on top of it? And that's actually what drove me from a airline standpoint. I moved from IBM to Microsoft to head the retail and healthcare competency, and from Microsoft to EY as a partner today, driving all verticals and all technologies. So yeah, that's a long journey of 40 plus years now.
amazing Bhavana. And like you said, you started off with a nutrition background. So many folks who are starting their career, what message would you give to them? Can they just define their future sitting right there and just extrapolate what they have done, or the future is unlimited potential, right?
Absolutely. And see, my one message to that question or response to that question is, what worked for us back then 25 years back is absolutely irrelevant in the current context, right?
Okay.
But I wouldn't say irrelevant. I would rather put it across maybe what technologies we've learned back then are eventually become obsolete in today's world, right? My story is a 25-year back story, but now today if you look at the tech interventions in our day-to-day lives, it demands a different mindset, different ability to adapt and adopt to the technologies that are driving this whole digital transformation. So I think anybody and everybody has to be open and eager to learn, and have that hunger to bring that tech impact into everything what a day starts with, right? From your day starts with a Suprabhatam playing on an Alexa to you driving an electric car to ordering your own favorite dress on your mobile phone. Everything in a day to day has that influence of technology, which is making it easier for us, right? So that's at least my message to the younger generation. I mean, I'm sure the younger generation don't need an advice from us, but I think the 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 exposure they have, I think if they can streamline those
Right.
thought process,
Right,
that
right.
would be more impactful is what I would
Right, right.
say.
And and like you said, I mean, your career has been a real example for many folks. It's you don't. I mean, you have to evolve,
Correct.
right? Like you did. I mean, you did not close yourself or become very rigid to say, I've studied this, so this is my path. You were open, and that was the time where internet technology was coming in, and whatever was relevant at that point of time, you were open, like you said, to adopting it. Does not matter what background that you come from. Now the other point that you mentioned was the way technologies are, the kind of technology which is relevant today, right, which is definitely the part of AI, ML. Like I said, every conversation today has an element of AI into it, at least discussion on that. So the flip side to that is, Bhavana, that many times, as a young graduate, I might get overwhelmed, right? What is the right path for me to choose? I mean, take somebody who's from your kind of a background, right? Maybe a sciences, pure sciences, or somebody from a engineering background, right? They have a lot of aspirations, want to succeed in life. But when you're bombarded so much with, coding is dead, or there's no point in coding, or today just learn this particular tool or AI agent, just go for it. So by the time you start focusing on one, there's something new,
Yeah,
right? The way tech
absolutely.
is changing. So with your experience, what are those fundamentals which young learners should focus on, right? And how much do you take? How much of all these changes? I mean, I know there's a lot of hype, yes, but there's a lot of truth in the power of technology. So what would be your message?
You bang on about the confusing, ever-evolving world, Vinay, especially for the kids in the colleges these days,
Right.
right? There's so much happening outside the world. And it's so easy to get distracted. Okay, one day we are talking about Gen AI, one day you're talking about quantum computing, one day you're talking about connected vehicles. So there is so much of action happening in the industry, which
Right.
will eventually lead to a lot of, I would say, massive information to consume and
Right.
then decide to focus, right? That I also would like to, again, this is my point of view, how our academics also structured, right? Like it's a very theoretical
Right.
structuring of our educational system. Maybe I think, see, some of, I'm not generalizing this statement, but what could also help as the graduate as the kids move towards the completion of their graduation in whichever stream that they pick, the first thing that I would say is that identify what interests you, right? Then connect it back to the impact that interest would make in a business or for your own personal aspirations, right? Many a times, what at least I have seen personally, especially in the tier 2, tier 3 colleges, is that we make the kids or the students more focus on grasping as much of academic knowledge,
Right.
but
Right.
we
Rote
miss
learning kind of stuff. Yeah.
we miss out the entire concept of readiness for the
Yeah.
industry where they may choose, whether you choose the tech industry or
Yeah.
engineering, when I say industrial industry. But the point is that I think the curriculum also need to embed industry's problem statements,
Right.
and then marrying it with the tech interventions, right?
Right.
Now the tech interventions would evolve, like what was in your year 1, by the time you finish your year 4, things would
It
have
has evolved.
changed,
Yeah.
right? But that also gives you an opportunity to kind of understand what is the problem statement you're trying to solve,
Right.
and is that your personal interest, right? Don't make education as like I have to earn a degree kind of a thing, right? Make education more as a readiness of preparing the next skilled workforce
Right,
to address to the business or to the industry's evolving problem statements or evolving the way you do businesses, right? Like, I mean, you and I can relate back. We had a kirana store back when we were children, and we know you go physically go there, and the shopman would pack it for you. Now today's world, the kids are so addicted to an Amazon.com. So I think it's one is how the curriculum can or how the educational institutes can collaborate with the industrial corporates to kind of marry these two together. And number two is again this revolution and evolution is going to continue, right? It's not going to change. I was just reading somewhere, we are talking about AI at some point of time. Now that AI has evolved in such an advanced manner where we are talking about NLPs, ML, and not even there. Like, we started with data engineering. Now that became data analysis, and then that became data science, and now we are talking about natural processing languages or natural language processing, and then we are talking about Gen AI, and then agentic AI. So this is a continuous process, and I think nobody can even imagine to what extent it is going to explode. But I think the best thing I personally see is the industrial collaboration with the educational institutes.
Sure.
And maybe sessions with the industry forums where the children also, or the kids or the students also have a visibility to pick and choose. Okay, here is my path to my professional life. I can take my example of my son only. Like, when he finished his 12th, he wanted, just because there's so much of information around it, he wanted to become an architect. Then I started asking questions, do you really know what it takes to be an architect? Then he changed it to, I want to become an industrial engineer, right? Then I started asking more questions. Then he said, no, I want to do a BBA. So the world of digital explosion is also creating a lot of confusion in the kids' mindset. There is a lot of role to play, both from educational institutes along with parents, to kind of help them navigate through this confused.
And I think the message is, like you said, your interest, you have to be consumed, so then you can actually navigate your journey much better. Now, going on to the next role, as as you first 2 to 3 years, you're just trying to get yourself understand the basics. Now there is a tendency, especially in our country, with the services economy, the IT services, many other, you have been now into consulting space, right? So as I graduate, as I navigate through my career, how important is it, or how different is it, if you'd like to call out any differences that you see, typically from a services mindset of the kind of problems that I'm solving, versus as an individual and as an organization or as a ecosystem country as a whole, to really get into a consultative mindset, right? Would like to hear from you on that.
Sure, Vinay. I think, see, this whole tech world started with the services, right? Like, there's a technology, and you kind of enable that technology for a business statement. And I think India, being in that industry for many years, and I think the mindset also has been in a manner that, okay, I have a problem statement defined by somebody else, and there is a technology, I will leverage this technology to address the problem statement.
Correct. The problem statement was given to you, right?
Exactly, right? I think that what I personally also have seen is, and I think that also has helped me accelerate my career growth, is because I started probing questions that, if I am trying to implement this solution, right, what is it actually helping the business, right? Somewhere I think that intricateness for me to kind of look into what I am doing, is it impacting?
What is the impact? Yeah.
Right? How is it impacting my clients? And the second thing is, I enjoyed being in front of the client, closer to the client, because that actually is what something I started loving it, because I'm closer to the actual reality of the ground. That also helped me to go back and define things in a different manner, rather than like doing it, there is a requirement given, I will enable this requirement kind of a thing. So gone are those days where the technology team should think about just the technology part of it, but I think the important aspect is understanding the client's business, understanding the problem statement, and then actually viewing the problem from the customer standpoint of view.
Empathy and
right, and then designing the solution in line with that.
And that's iterative, no? It's very agile,
because the customers' businesses also are changing as drastic as the technology is changing, right? I think that agility of being on top of the industry needs and the customer needs, and refining and defining, or actually defining and refining the technical interventions according to that, is utmost important given the current nature of businesses today, right? Now, and what also happens is that as you evolve working with many clients in the same domain or across domains, you also start building your own point of view, right? How things could be done better. That's where the customers also start valuing you, because you are there standing along with them, understanding their businesses, understanding their pitfalls or the betterments, and then you are also helping them identify how can you do better. Right? I think value what you deliver to a client, I mean, see, you may call it a services point of view or a consultative point of view. If I have to put it in a rudimentary language, the whole thing is about what is the value you're delivering to clients' business, right? That may have tech interventions, that may have collaboration interventions, that may have
process improvements,
right? So
it's a holistic view that you have.
So when we are talking about this consultative thing, I go back to the first question that we were discussing about. What are the what is that skills that the newer generation should develop, right? I think as they start, it's extremely important to understand the tech abilities and capabilities, but I think it's equally important to understand the industries.
That's right.
Right.
The domain.
So you become consultative from the beginning rather than becoming consultative halfway.
It cannot be a switch which gets on halfway through. Absolutely.
Right, so that's
and also, I mean, extending to that, typically what happens, Bhavana, is since we've been part of the, skilling industry, we help folks build up their competencies. What we've seen is take somebody who's a data scientist, right? Typically works on notebooks, Jupyter notebooks, Python code, and it's like main or mera code, and they grow up that way. Yes, they build their competency in terms of a specific coding per se, but yes, now today, of course, we have the whole aspect of generative AI coming in, coding assistant tools coming in, but as they grow their careers there, they think that that is the end, coding is the end, right? But when you have to architect a solution, when you have to really become an architect, like you said, understanding the business, collaboration, a lot of other aspects become important, and that is where what we have seen is also with work from home, and you kind of very solo, you cannot win this as a solo.
Correct.
Right? It is a team sport.
Correct.
Right? So anything you want, you did mention a lot of skills, but for architects, right, who would, when you're with a client, you understand and you're architecting solutions, you're talking about different options. For that, you have to be skilled in terms of understanding what is available, right?
Correct.
So anything specific you'd like to
Sure.
call out?
Definitely. I mean, when at least during my my mid-career years, I would say there are two clear or three clear paths that one could choose, right? You go deep into tech,
Right.
or you go deep into project management part or
Right.
people management part of
Right.
it,
Right.
or you go deep into domain part of it,
Right.
right? But I think today's world, you have to merge all three of these
Correct,
things
correct. It's
together.
no longer a T.
Absolutely. I think it's the beauty of bringing all these three tracks together
Right.
to solve bigger problems
That's right.
for your clients, or
That's right.
or a business problem statement, right? See, earlier when you were deep tech, you were focusing on one specific soloed pillar. Now, the ever evolving business needs
Right.
and the respective tech interventions today also plays, because there are multiple technologies or multiple what do you say, digital abilities that we are kind of embedding into the businesses, requires someone to understand a broader perspective.
Sure.
Right, when you're talking about an enterprise architecture. So now, gone are those days people are calling you a tech architect or a solution architect. People are calling them as enterprise architects.
Right.
When we are talking about enterprise architect, someone who understands where the data would sit, someone where would understand how the data will flow, how the infrastructure definition or the design would look like, and like for example, from an infra layer to an operating layer to your application layer to your analysis layer, to the point of consumption of this entire thing, or like I would say endpoint of the consumer of these applications.
Right.
Someone, or the need of the hour today to become better in, or to get to that path of a enterprise architect, is demands a lot of skills to understand the whole ecosystem
Right.
of an organization, tech part of it, right? Someone, I'm not even playing a domain game here, at least, right? For the first time, I'm just keeping domain aside. But someone who understands the systems, who understands how systems speak to each other, someone who understands how should the data flow from one system to another system and then to the end consumer,
Right.
and what are the security measures, because today's world is all about, see, as the businesses are growing, digital interventions are exploding, that also brings advantages and disadvantages, and one of the major disadvantage being cyber threat.
Right.
Right?
Right.
How do you incorporate cyber?
Correct.
So I think it's a role now which which brings its own enhanced responsibilities and accountabilities of understanding not just one tech but a much broader spectrum of things, which needs a lot of investment by each individuals, because today as we speak there is enough and more skill gap of those roles today, right? That's one of the critical roles in the digital innovations that we are seeing and will continue to see. I think that skill gap will always become a hindrance for the growth. That we will see foresee.
And there is no way I can get this skill attending a course, right?
Absolutely
it is a
not.
journey. Right?
Yes.
It is. It's not a sprint. I take 100 meters. It's a marathon.
Absolutely.
And you are at your career where you are because of all the experiences. You cannot rob yourself of that experience,
Correct.
right? So, which means people have to be patient. They have to work their hands dirty. Sometimes not everything has an immediate outcome, right?
Absolutely.
So it's being very choosy about I'll only do this kind of work or I'll only do that kind of a work, and being very impulsive. Yeah.
You're very true on that front, and I can, if not taking my personal story too often, but what actually kind of helped me to reach where I stand today is about like I can take example of like coming from a nutrition, then technology.
Right.
I said bring it on. Then even at that point of time when I got trained in Siebel, there were out of 70 people, 65 people were looking for configuration. I said I want to be different. What is that something that will differentiate my positioning in the market? So then I thought, okay, if all these configurators are getting ready, they need somebody who has to do a data architecture. So I chose data architecture. So the point is my employability became much faster.
Yeah.
Right. Once that role is done, then the evolving integration capabilities came in. So I was the first certified integration expert in Siebel at that point of time. And then my employability became much faster.
So which means being very curious, right? Having that hunger, being at the moment.
Exactly. And keep your eyes open to what is happening in the world, right? And if you really want to accelerate and you really want to make a difference and you want to become more relevant in the industry, I think that openness of tech adoption and learning, because I think nothing can beat learning in any context, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, not learning doesn't necessarily need to be a classroom training, but there's a lot of learning from an industry point of view or on the job learning, right? Take up a challenge which you never done before.
That's true.
And I keep telling a lot of, when I do mentoring, I keep telling a lot of people about my 50-50 philosophy. What is that means? When you are looking for a job change, look at something that is 50% to your existing skills and 50% has to give you an opportunity to learn new skills.
New.
Right? That is what keeps you get up every day morning and keep going, right? That willingness and that courage to pick up something which you've never done before is something that would actually put you on a pedestal a little bit compared to others. And maybe your growth path could be much
and also
faster.
very self-satisfying, right? Like
Absolutely.
you said, I mean, nobody has to, you don't have to come out of bed in the morning to come to work.
Absolutely.
You don't have to drag yourself, right? That's so true. Well, looking at your rich experience in aviation industry, Bhavana, what are the career opportunities, certain skill gaps that you see for somebody wanting to get into that industry? If you could throw some light.
Sure. Vinay, aviation is not a new industry. It's been there for many years, right? But the way the experiences have changed. Now airlines and airports have not become just fly in and fly outs, right? We as consumers of those services started expecting and demanding a lot of things from those services, right? If you see, like example, if you go to any airport in India for that matter, I'm just not even getting to the international airports, right? Airports are no longer those aircraft stopping and taking off kind of things. Now they have become experience centers, right?
Yes.
Whether you're talking about shopping retail experiences, shopping experience, food experiences, or to an extent immersive reality experiences where you can engage the kids or the younger generations to kind of leverage the time that they spend at an airport, right? I think the point I'm trying to convey is that whether it is airlines or the airports, they are also constantly thriving to meet to the ever evolving demands of the consumers.
Right.
And in that whole process, there is a lot of tech and digital skill sets that are required. One, from running the airlines and to an airport, that's one area where I see it as. Number two, I would also like to highlight the point that Indian aviation is going is in a growth path to become the third largest aviation in the world after US and China. What does that mean for the Indian economy, right? We will see more fleet in the air. Right now, as we speak, we have about 700 aircrafts flying in the Indian skies, but by 2030, in the next 10 years, that is going to become almost 2,000 fleet.
Wow.
Right. I'm sure you read you read the news about Air India placing an order for both Airbus and Boeing.
Correct.
Indigo placing. I think this year the largest orders for the aircraft manufacturers happened in India. Worldwide, right? Now, when you have the reason also is that the demand for passenger travel has also evolved in the continent. If you look at back then, airline flying was a luxury.
Yeah.
Now today, the affordability of the passengers have increased, and the willingness to spend on the time versus money has gone up. So the domestic demand or the international demand has gone up, for which we also need a lot of fleet, and a lot of fleet brings with the need to kind of digitize the whole process. Number two, that fleet also brings the need for maintenance and engineering in the Indian context. So India is poised to become the world MRO hub. And that needs not just only to cater to the domestic Indian carriers, but the intent is to kind of make it more approachable for the global carriers also. And I think that's one of the visions that Indian government also has, Atmanirbhar Bharat kind of a thing, made in India. There's a lot of emphasis that's happening on the parts manufacturing or auxiliary manufacturing and the engineering and repair of it. The entire aviation will open up need for lot of skills, starting from pilots to the cabin crews to the engineering guys to the ground staff. But are we ready there yet? No. There's a huge skill gap that needs to be bridged. I think there's some efforts from Skill India that's happening, but I see a long way. But that's an opportunity of not just tech skills, but also the engineering and the customer experience skills that are required in this path. I mean, aviation is definitely one industry which is poised to take India's GDP in a different trajectory.
And also, like you mentioned, aero and the non-aero, right? So with the airports, the experience, so much of opportunity for retail right there. No?
See, if you look at some of the reports, this I think when I was designing the digital airport blueprint with few of the airports, Vinay, then see, aviation industry is a very governed industry, right? There's only so much the airlines can make through a passenger travel. The airports can make through a passenger travel, right? So if you look at the new model, which is PPP model, private public partnership models, I think that's the only way where you can elevate the experiences in a different direction. And some of these are bidding at a different prices, right? How do you make profitable with that expensive cost? So the only way that they can make is through generating non-aero revenue. Right? If you see, every single airport in India is going to become an airport city, like Delhi Aero City or Bangalore. If you see, the 4,000 acres land is getting converted into a much larger ecosystem where you will have health city, you have what is it called, tech cities and stuff and all. And that opens up a lot of opportunities for other businesses which also need the skills of both tech and non-tech skills as well, right? So it's a butterfly effect, right? There is an impact in the core industry, and the surround ecosystem also gets impacted both either ways, right? Like a positive way or a negative way. But I'm hoping that with the growth that we are seeing, it's extremely promising future that we look at, where we kind of expect a lot of the upcoming talent to contribute towards the growth of this, whether like I can talk about like aircrafts emission of lot of data, capturing the data to kind of drive insights about the aircraft performance. And again, how can you optimize the aircraft turnaround time at an airport?
Right.
5 minutes of efficiency brings in millions of dollars of saving for an aircraft, right? And how do you, and at the airport side, how do you optimize the space, right? From a smart parking to retail experiences where they can provide personalized experiences. They know who Bhavana is, and they can preempt
what your choices will be, accordingly get your stocks and all that.
Absolutely. So it's actually there was the concept at some point of time was that toll to tail, which is basically you cross the toll of the Bangalore airport.
Right.
From there, the Bangalore airport planned to capture the customers through the 5G network or the satellite networking, and from then till the tail, which is basically the aircraft pushing back. How do you provide seamless experiences to passengers throughout their journey? And the journey doesn't end there, right? You land and then you continue, right? So ideas are ever evolving. Tech is also playing a very critical role.
That's right.
And not just the airlines part. I think every single industry is adopting tech as much as we all could think of, and it will continue. I can take another example how AI is playing a very critical role in healthcare. In my stint at Microsoft, we had one of the healthcare providers with whom I was closely working with. See, all of us go for annual medical checks, right? We go, we get it something, and then we go meet the physician. But the role of an AI here is like how the hospitals or the healthcare provider is collating the data, predicting your cardiac risk score, leveraging AI ML models, and then coming back and telling you, Bhavana, if you continue this lifestyle, this is your risk score of at certain age, there is a high probability of you having a cardiac risk. And another case was that using virtual reality, AR, VR kind of, or a mixed reality, what we call it as. See, if you see, the healthcare in India is not cheap, or actually is not affordable to everybody.
Right.
Both from a financial standpoint as well as the availability of the skilled doctors in their regions, right? Leveraging AI interventions, there was a surgery conducted in Mysore, where the specialized doctor was in Mysore. The surgery was conducted in Jaipur, in as if it was literally the surgeon being there, with the lowest possible cost, because the surgeon, and instantly, because typically the availability of a specialized surgeon becomes a challenge. Then the flying in, flying out of the surgeon, all this adds to a cost to a patient end of the day.
Right.
How do we kind of leverage tech to make healthcare more affordable, more reachable, and make that accessibility part more relevant in the case of healthcare, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, sorry, I've taken a very lengthy
No, but
explanation.
very insightful. You mentioned about aviation, healthcare. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So, AI is going to rule the world in different maturity levels. We've just seen one wave of it, and I think more waves yet to come.
And like you said, AI would marry the business, right?
Correct.
It's no longer going to be a tech problem.
No,
it is a business, and like you mentioned in so many contexts, ultimately it's understanding the business. So
Totally.
Thanks for bringing in so many rich insights. And as we conclude, Bhavana, everything is, there are opportunities, and it's only for the eyes to see that opportunities, right? It's what you see is not just, what is visible, but can you see beyond what is visible, right?
Correct.
I saw once there was a 4x4 square, and then they said how many squares. So answer is right. You can just see 4 into 4, but then there are a lot more squares. Right there.
Yeah.
So that comes to, if you could, as we conclude, talk about the ultimately skill set and mindset, innovation. We spoke about hunger, with, like you said, with AI ruling the world, and your own experience. How important, or what would be those factors, or how could somebody really bring in innovation, and the right mindset to solve the larger problems, especially in the context of AI?
So Vinay, it's a very relevant question, very close to my heart, and I think this may also resonate a lot to many people, irrespective of at what levels of their career they are in. I strongly feel there is of my principle called 6 C's, which is
6 C's, is it?
C's,
Okay.
right? Clarity of thought, courage to take risks, building competencies, relevant competencies. The fourth one is commitment to achieve what you want to achieve. The fifth one is about collaboration. The sixth one is about communications, right? So this 6 C's is something that I constantly keep questioning myself. I think that's very important to, it's basically like, you really need to be clear about what you want to do in life, or it doesn't need to have like, 10 years roadmap or something, right? Have small objectives, small goals, short mid-term goals, long-term goals, but have that clarity, because clarity drive goals. The second thing is, if you are clear, have that courage to go behind that what you want to chase.
Wow.
And to chase that, you really need to build competencies, right? So build competencies around it. Fifth one is, once you build the competencies, commit to your goals. You have to be committed to what you want to achieve. And once you have that, I think it's extremely important that you collaborate with adjacencies. And above all of that, having a clear communication path with your family, with your ecosystem at work, or personal ecosystems, so that people are aware what you are asking for. See, point is, many a times, especially women, we don't speak up what we want, and that becomes a bottleneck, and we think that they may not agree for it. But unless until you speak up and share your aspirations both with your leadership as well as at home, how will you achieve? So I think when you have all these aligned, then things will fall in place.
Correct.
Right? You don't need to do any rocket science. There's so much that internally you can bring before you go and ask for something from help from external validations. Once you have these 6 C's sorted, I think the first thing that will have is your mindset will change.
Right.
The minute your mindset
become more clearer, right? Because otherwise you're cluttered.
And it is so easy to get confused, because you are bombarded with so much of information around you, too many things happening around you. And the last and most important aspect is that absolutely be open to adopt and adapt, because world is always changing. If you are not able to adopt newer things and adapt yourself to the changing environment, it becomes difficult to be relevant. Yes, we will survive, but to thrive, I think it's extremely important. So I think on that note, my advice, or I say an advice, but my point of view is that be open for the ever evolving challenges around you, be open to take up something new, be open to learn something new, be open to become somebody new.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's at least something that I would like to share with everybody around here.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, if there was an audience, there would have been a big clap. And if I'm sitting next to Bhavana, folks, the kind of energy she's bringing out, that's so contagious,
Thank
and
you.
I think, with the note of 6 C's that you brought in, that is like you're standing out as a role model for many, right? For a lot of women and for a lot of youngsters, a lot of people, mid-career professionals. Thank you it was a very enriching insight. Thank you for coming over and, really agreeing to share your perspective and, share important learnings that you've had in your journey.
No, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you, Vinay, and I'm glad that I could share my own personal experiences
Right.
here, and I feel extremely privileged that any of my experiences or any of my both personal and professional experiences can bring any impact
To the
next
larger.
generation or to the larger group of people. I truly feel grateful and immensely honored. Thank you so much for having me here.
Pleasure. Thank you, Bhavana.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Portal. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for many, many more exciting updates. Thank you.